Is justice really blind? Or do we live in a two-tiered justice system that judges its citizens based on their gender rather than the crime they have committed? What is the penalty for a teacher who has sex with a student? In America, most schools have eliminated their sexual education courses as being too obtrusive into the lives of students. These classes were meant to prepare students for the eventuality of having sex. But there was no eventuality for them having sex with their own teachers. Tonight, on Predator 101, we discuss a justice system based upon gender. We hire teachers to mold our children's minds and to keep the relationship with them above the belt and purely platonic. Most teachers can't find the time between creating a winning lesson plan and grading homework, but some find the time to have sex with their students. Case in point, social studies teacher Dory Myers, age 29 years at the time, who had oral sex with her 14-year-old male student at multiple times in multiple locations. For that crime, Judge Michael Opus sentenced her to 10 years probation. Dory did not have to serve 1 day in jail, nor did she have to surrender her teaching certificate. Good evening, and welcome to Predator 101. The case today we're talking about is of Dory Meyer versus the legal precedents handed down by Judge Michael Opus. Now, you may also join us live tonight for an interactive discussion on this case. I'm asking a question: do you feel that she received the correct sentence? Do you feel the title of this case and the story should have been her actual crime instead of something milder? So click on the link in the description where the comment section is for your opinion at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Now, let's get into the case of Mrs. Meyer. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the meaning of the word justice now as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishments. The administration of law, especially the establishment or determination of rights according to the rules of law or equity. It goes on to say, the quality of being just, impartial, or fair, conformity to truth, fact, or reason. Now, in this case, the Honorable Judge Michael Opus failed on each one of these logic points when judging the actions of social studies teacher Dory Myers from the New School for Leadership and the Arts in the Bronx on September the 12th of the year 2018. Instead, Judge Opus would pass down one of the most unimaginable punishments for the crime of performing fellatio on a minor in history. And for those who don't know what fellatio is, that's oral sex on a 14-year-old boy. Now, a judgment that would incite anger in every country that heard about the ruling. A free pass, if you would, for an educator who on multiple occasions and in multiple jurisdictions throughout the Bronx and the city of New York molesting a child. Prosecutors in the case sought from Judge Opus no less than 2 years in prison, along with revocation of her teaching certificate. Although Ms. Myers had multiple sex encounters with the young boy, she was only charged with one incident of fellatio, and that incident occurred in November the 1st at West 168th Street and Broadway in Washington Heights. Now, this was according to the criminal complaint. But how did the public come to find out about this illicit relationship of teacher to student? Ask yourself. Was it that the teacher herself saw her behavior as something wrong and confessed it to the child's parents? She just had to come clean. She had to get it off of her conscience. Nope, not that. Or perhaps she stepped forward to surrender her teaching certificate as hundreds did before her for the same exact crime. It's something you must lose. You cannot continue to do it. Nope. That's not either. Absolutely not. On both counts. After she pled not guilty to a single count after her initial arrest, each of a criminal sexual act and endangering the welfare of a child, Myers was released without bail. In most cases, that doesn't happen. Prosecutors in the case initially requested a $50,000 bail and said Myers abused her position as a trusted authority figure. But Judge Laura Drager ultimately released the teacher on her own recognizance. At the start, you could see that there were a bunch of stellar individuals that allowed this teacher to be judged as the victim instead of the victimizer. Although Miss Myers professed herself to be totally innocent, she was given a 30-day order of protection requiring her to stay away from the unidentified victim. Of course, they could not give his name or face because he's a minor. That tells you in itself that it's wrong. She simply could not admit her guilt. For Mrs. Dory Meyer, wife of Matt Meyer, a Rockland County Sheriff's deputy, was too cowardly to do such a thing. In fact, all the way up until January of 2018, she maintained her innocence of even knowing the child any way outside of a teaching environment. Now, all those students as well as teachers stepped forward to say that they had witnessed her giving him a shoulder massage on more than one occasion. She still maintained that innocence, so much so that her lawyer released a statement to the effect that Mrs. Myers was simply a model citizen who looks forward to clearing her name. That so-called model citizen was turned in because cops got word of Myers' misdeeds after the boy, believed to be one of Myers' students, told a classmate, who then notified a school administrator. So much for a model citizen, I imagine. At her initial January sentencing hearing, Mrs. Myers, in the company of her supportive husband, who stood behind her although she was charged with the criminal sexual act and endangering the welfare of a child. Now, in court that Thursday, Myers broke down, sobbing at the defense table as her attorney, Andrew Stoll, argued that there were inconsistencies in the court documents pertaining to the locations now of his client's alleged encounter with the victim. Think about that. He's arguing technicalities. He says there's inconsistencies pertaining to the locations of his client's alleged encounter with the victim. Not that she didn't do it at all. A smart move on his behalf, sure. No doubt. But nothing more than semantics for a court that had already enough evidence to convict her easily. Ladies and gentlemen, I've noticed for myself that in each one of these cases we bring you, there is a theme of throwing the child under the bus, insisting that they either liked it, initiated it, or were warded off by the teacher, but didn't take the hint. Prior to her trial, Miss Myers' Facebook page showed a series of smiling photos in which she alleged and laughed with friends and drank straight out of a champagne bottle before she had it deleted shortly thereafter. You see, Myers also wrote several postings about her students and partying in a number of different instances. In several now deleted photos, as I said before, she wore shirts with catchy slogans referencing alcohol, such as "Whiskey makes me frisky" and "Champagne all day." Now, I would imagine that these would be funny any day of the week, but not so appealing if you are trying to make your case in a court of law. And she knew that. This is clearly why Mrs. Myers deleted those pictures. She knew that her case was coming up. But what kind of defense can one mount for themselves against a minor with the evidence stacked against them and expect to walk away scot-free? Who could do that? Obviously, one in this judge's courtroom. For in any other courtroom, you could get more time for driving intoxicated, stealing from a pharmacy, or swimming in the reflection pool in front of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. At this point, I feel it is worth noting here that in a tweet from 2015, which has now been deleted, Miss Myers bragged that her students often commented on her looks. One of those responses from a student read as follows: "Miss Myers, you're like real pretty, but no offense, you got a big forehead." So she claims one student told her, and furthermore, the Department of Education about the whole affair called the allegation deeply troubling. but said Myers has no prior disciplinary history. What does that mean? If the incident was wrong, it's wrong, no matter what you did in the past. Males are judged the same way. Now, because of this, she had not been fired at the time, but was reassigned away from students. So they have a known pedophile in a case of rape that you did not fire immediately. She was not arrested immediately, but you just reassigned her away from students, still on the payroll in the same school. What Myers won't have to do is to go to jail or surrender her teaching license. The latter detail is perhaps the most jarring. Instead, Myers will spend the next 10 years on probation, leaving her little margin for error henceforth in repeating this crime. Miss Myers' lawyer had these kind of words to say about her. She still is a talented teacher and has those skills, and I don't want to see any reason to destroy her ability to make a living and to contribute to society in a positive way, Myers' lawyer's Andrew Stahl said. She already missed that boat. Now, the judge did not strip Myers of her license and said that it was up to the Department of Education. Judge Michael Orbis emphasized that Myers would have to register as a level 1 sex offender. Now, for those of you out there who don't know what a level 1 sex offender is, let me school you. For reference, that means Myers will not have the official designation of a predator, and she can be deregistered as a sex offender after 20 years and will also not be listed on the public directory of sex offenders. So that means if she was in your neighborhood, you would have no more idea that she did that. Now just imagine for 1 minute if the situation of the sexes were reversed. People would be outraged if a 30-year-old man had oral sex with a 14-year-old student and only got a slap on the wrist. And the crime would not be labeled as had oral sex, but something much more egregious. Remember, we're talking about this tonight. Make sure you click the link. Myers' lawyers, Mr. Stahl, had said in the past that allegations against his client were untrue and that Myers was an outstanding teacher. So much for the outstanding teacher, I imagine. He goes on to say, my understanding is that she's a really outstanding teacher, he said. It sounds like no good deed goes unpunished. He says, you reach out to make yourself available to kids, and the next thing you know, a single accusation can destroy your career. End quote. I don't think it's an accusation. I think actually when you have sex with a child, that destroys your career. Now, understanding the wording of her attorney to besmirch the character of a child. Now, typically in the case of two adults facing one another, it is understandable that an attorney would have fair game in doing so. I understand that. In court, it's whoever wins with the best attorney, with the best story, true or false. But in this case, this is unconscionable. Now, following Mrs. Myers' second court appearance, the New School for Leadership and Arts had been axed by the city's Department of Education since her last court date. They fired her. Ms. Myers was fired and she is not eligible to work in New York City schools again. And it's from the DOE spokesman, Doug Cohen. He said, there's no place for this deeply troubling behavior in our schools, and Ms. Myers has been suspended without pay since June, said Department of Education spokesman Doug Cohen. It took you that long to do something like that. Like I said before, if it was a guy, he'd be gone already, right? Under the jail, a lot of comments we get to these postings. Now, she'll be terminated as soon as legally possible, he said. Myers of Rockland County was modified from classroom duty upon her initial arrest. Before her suspension, she was earning $66,931 a year. So, in closing on this case, for those of you out there that are not aware, in 1994, the United States Department of Justice estimated the number of men who are sexually assaulted each year in the United States is approximately 60,000, with the greatest risk at age 4. As always, and continue this conversation live tonight, join us by clicking on that link below entitled, Did She Get Away With It? This is Charles River for Predator 101. We thank you for watching. Join us again next Saturday for a justice system based upon gender. Good night.